So how then after that, any trip that you remember with Gurudev?
I think the one trip that I remember was when Gurudev was speaking on chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita, and that happened in Arosa in 2009. And that's where Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, and I thought, wow, you have to be there. And the trip was quite expensive, and I had just seen that, and I thought, my heart really wants to be there. Could you please make it work? Like, the money is not there, but I had sent that on to all my students and said, please go. It's such an opportunity. Arosa is a small number of people that get to spend such beautiful time with Gurudev. And the minute I had thought that, somebody had called me and said, have you seen this? And I said, yes, I just sent it on to you. And she asked, are we going? And she said, no. I said, you go. And she said, no, I'm just telling you we are going because I have bought this plane ticket for you. I have bought the accommodation and the hotel for you. You just have to get your plane ticket. I was totally stunned. And what had happened, we had spent 3 days with Gurudev in Arosa in this little town in the snow, and had this really amazing experience of Gurudev and the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And on the last day, what had happened the year before was that everybody had gone with Gurudev up to the top of the mountain, and Gurudev would play in the snow, and they kept asking Gurudev, and they said, no, the Switzerland weather was saying that there's no way, the gondola is closed, and Swiss weather is supposed to be so accurate, and it just said that that it's impossible. And I remember the silence course teacher was telling Gurudev, it's impossible, and Guruji said, when my devotees want to go, nothing will stop us. The weather will change. Let's go. And it was completely storming. It was, I remember to see, it was like really raining and dark clouds around that mountain. And by the time we had got there, it had opened up again, and we were the only people up. Up, and we went with Gurudev, and people were throwing snowballs, which he played with everybody. There's a lot of quality time that Gurudev had given to everybody. And I wanted to make sure that I was on the same gondola going down with Gurudev. And so I worked it out in that way, and I was standing next to him. A lot of people, so we were waiting for the gondola, and people would come and ask Gurudev questions. And at one point he said, we should all be quiet and let's all chant Om Namah Shivaya. And to my mind, I thought, okay, Guruji had given us so much of time, so maybe he wants some peace and quiet. And then he started chanting, and we started chanting, and we went down in the gondola, and I was walking next to him, and then he pointed and he said, Mukeshji is very happy, and he said, look, and wherever Gurudev had walked, all the leaves on the trees would do pradakshina to Gurudev. And then it just struck me that, we see Gurudev as the physical form, but nature knows him as the divine. And it was really a breathtaking moment, and also realizing that, Gurudev is this huge being that we have no idea of the vastness and greatness of Gurudev, and what we see physically and what he is doing at another level is actually quite intangible. And for devotee to actually see that, nature understands this wonderful being that is on the planet.
So when you say Mukeshji that the leaves were doing pradakshina, what do you mean exactly?
So it would be as if, like, the leaves would be like that, and they would, like, as Gurudev passed, as he's walking, you would just see all the leaves, like the trees doing that, and it was really like, and actually I didn't even notice. He pointed, he said, see, nature is happy. And then I noticed, so seeing that dimension of which Gurudev lives is quite unfathomable, like we often relate to him as Gurudev in this form. I think for a devotee to see something like that is remarkable. It is really special.
Mukeshji, many of our art of living teachers, they have some healing story or some story with Gurudev, which is that Gurudev is really supporting us. Any healing story from your life or maybe from your family or something like that?
I think there's one, really special, like with Gurudev also comes mother, and there's such a precious story that I have, and it happened in 2009 when my mother took some medication. She started her blood stopped clotting. So when she would just rest her hand against the face, it would turn into a big bruise, and eventually she had to go to hospital, and they had said that there's nothing for her to do. There's nothing left. They can't do anything, and you're supposed to have a minimum of 400 white blood cells per count, and that helps to keep the clotting. And she only had a count of one, and so they basically told my mother, to close her eyes and be at peace because she will not open her eyes again. And at the same time, I had messaged Gurudev to say, my mother, this is happening. And it just felt as if that message had gone through. Gurudev had seen. And soon after that, after the blood count started rising, and even my mother says she knew that it was time to go. And 9 years later, 7 years later, she's still with us, and I'm so grateful for that. So that was a really touching healing experience. It even happened to me in there are many healing stories. In about 2014, I had because as a teacher, we go to work, you teach in the night, so it's like we have a 24-hour job that rotates, and the one can't clash with the other. So obviously, sometimes our body takes a bit of strain. And at one point, I had gone in 2014. I had gone to the doctor, and he said, "Look, we have to operate on you. You can't let this be like that." And I said, "No, don't worry. I'm going to go to India, and I will sort it out." And he looked at me very skeptical and said, "Sure, okay. You know what does he say? If somebody has a belief, he can't put down the beliefs." I said, "Okay, go. We'll operate when you come back." And as soon as I had come to the ashram, and I had gone for an Nadi checkup, and the doctor also said, "This is really serious condition. I don't think you should leave India until you operate. It's not safe to fly. I think you should go to Gurudev." I have a pic, and so I had gone to Gurudev, told him the story and everything, and he had given me an apple, and he said, "Have this apple. Don't worry. You know, apple will sort everything out. And you take some panchakarma and you go home." And he said, "Don't worry. You're not going to die. You have too much of good work to do on the planet. You'll be fine." And I had gone back, and I remember the shock on the doctor's face when he had done the test and the scan, and it was completely normal. In fact, I also remember that the time in Rishikesh in 2006, right after Silver Jubilee, um, we were in the river, and I was drying myself, and Guruji, I was living in a kutir just off the Ganges, and I saw there were some people from Eastern Europe, and there was a lady. They looked like they were trying to do Reiki, some kind of spiritual healing, and I didn't want to interfere, and I saw something was wrong. And eventually, I saw that this person is getting more and more paralyzed, and I realized that she's having a stroke. So I thought, this whatever they're doing is not working. We need to take her to a doctor. I was quite strong then and young, so I just took somebody and said, "Come, let's take her to a doctor." So two of us were carrying her, and then as we were walking, I realized, wait, but Gurudev is up here. Let's take her to Gurudev. And Guruji was in a meeting, and we had taken her up and placed it on the floor. And Gurudev stopped the meeting, and he looked at her, and he said, he looked at her and he said, "Get up." And I remember the look on this woman's face. It's like, I think I'm having a stroke, and you're telling me get up. And Guruji used quite a firm tone, and he said, get up. And all of a sudden, this woman, out of shock, she stood up, and he said, come walk to me. And as she started walking, Gurudev tossed her an apple, and she caught the apple. And he said, apple a day keeps the doctor away. And we're looking at Gurudev completely astounded because this woman was completely paralyzed on I can't remember which side, and she was unable to move. And then we looked at him, and he said, now is a good time to be in silence. We'll go for a walk, but we won't say anything. And I remember this woman, she was running and jumping, and it was really such a remarkable experience to have witnessed from that state of paralysis to up and jumping. And at night I saw her, she was still like, she couldn't speak English, but she was saying like, see, I'm moving. And so those were some of the experiences that I have had. In fact, there's one more I remember from 2018. All of a sudden, my thyroid had gone hyperthyroid, so it feels like you're having this fast heartbeat and anxiety. And I keep thinking, okay, I have to cut this. And I kept thinking, okay, don't bother Guruji, don't bother Guruji, don't call him, don't. Okay. Eventually, after about 2 months, I called him, and Gurudev was like, I said, Guruji, I'm having. He says, yes, yes, don't worry, your thyroid is now reset. Do not touch anything and don't cut anything. He said, you got it, you don't cut anything. And right from that second, that everything had just completely normalized. That, that was that experience in that instant. He can change something that serious. And it really felt as if, as this happened, your heart started beating. And within that phone call, within a few minutes, it completely normalized. So those were my experiences of that kind of physical healing. Yeah.
So Mukeshji, any more stories from Gurudev's visits to Cape Town?
Yes, in fact, after Gurudev had visited in Cape Town in 2002, he had come in 2006 twice and in 2012. So when Gurudev had come in 2006, I remember he had gone to Durban, and then he would be coming to Cape Town. So we had also gone to meet Gurudev in Durban, and I remember we were sitting at the airport, and I was unconscious of the time because Gurudev was traveling from India. He'd land in Joburg, and then he'd go to Durban. And I had kind of coincided that trip, hoping I could meet him at the airport, be the first one to meet him. And I was sitting at the airport. I remember I was drinking a juice, and all of a sudden it felt as if this subtle, warm blanket had descended. And these tears just started coming out of my eyes, and my heart just knew Gurudev has landed in Joburg. And as I looked at the time, it was about the right time. It was this feeling that this grace and love has descended on this continent. So as we got on the flight, he went from Joburg to Durban, I went from Cape Town to Durban, and we had met him at the baggage arrival inside. So I was the first one to have met him inside of from South Africa before he left. And I remember at that event, there were 3,000 people. It was just after Gurudev's 50th birthday. And Gurudev was doing this talk, and he was speaking. And as he was speaking, the mic in his left hand, with his right hand, he was cutting the cake. And he said, it's a birthday cake, and it's going to be for all of us. And then he started, as he was giving beautiful knowledge, and at the same time, he was cutting this cake, and then he started cutting the cake in layers like that. And he had said that everybody will get a piece. Everybody should come and get a piece, and everybody will get a piece. And I thought this sounds like one of those stories with Jesus and the loaves and how they became many, and like, how would this be because the cake is that big? And as we started giving out that cake, literally when the last person came, that was the end of it. So about 3,000 people had shared a cake the size. And obviously, everybody felt as you have that, it feels so full and so wonderful. In fact, we've had that experience at airports sometimes traveling with Gurudev when he eats before and gives everybody a small bite. And just that small bite, you feel as if you've had a whole meal, such contentment and such bliss dawns inside of you. So that was when we had met Gurudev in Cape Town, in Durban. Then he had come to Cape Town, and I was driving him, and I had heard of the silence course and the Patanjali Yoga Sutras of Guruji speaking, and how people get so nervous around him that they pass out in the car. He has to give them directions, and I was like, okay, look at the route and see everything. So I had to drive Guruji from his house to Parliament, where Guruji would give a talk to the members of Parliament. And at one point Guruji just said, no, just pull the car over here. They're not ready yet. And I looked at him and I thought, okay. And then he said, now you can drive. Because he said, no, it would have been awkward that they would have started scrambling, etc. So let's just wait. And he just pulled the car. He said, wait. And he said, okay, now it's time to go. Let's go. And as we got there, they had all just come. And it was an unmistakable knowing that, Gurudev can see in other places, in other parts of time. And it was really an interesting experience. And they were so impressed with Guruji at Parliament that they invited Gurudev to come back at the end of the year when South Africa was celebrating the centenary of Gandhi and the passive resistance movement that Gandhi had led 100 years ago. And they had invited Gurudev as this living ambassador of peace and love and the living embodiment of Gandhiji. So Gurudev had come again, and that was in 2000, December 2006, I remember. And it was really amazing. I had traveled with Guruji it was a schedule that was filled from morning to night. And at that point, I had just become a teacher, but I was a great procrastinator because I had this perfectionism in mind that I would always wait and think about things. But I was writing Gurudev's media at the time, and I was often wondering, how is it going to be done like this? And I think for so many days, I had no sleep, and the press statements would just come out perfectly. But the one main event that happened, it was actually happening on the Saturday. It was a huge event with Gurudev and our past presidents, and it had a lot of media coverage. And I remember the people from the ABC Bangalore saying, you need to give us a press statement, because if we don't get it now, there's just no chance of this happening, because it'll just miss all the media. It will miss the Sunday papers, and then it'll be only Monday, and there'll be no news from it. So please give us a statement. I kept saying, listen, I can't, because Guruji didn't even speak, so I don't know what to do. Just as soon as he speaks, I'll send it to you. And as Guruji started speaking, I started typing. And I think 15 minutes after he was done, I had this press statement. And, we sent it off and we printed it. And there was not a single comma out of place, not a grammatical mistake, no spelling mistake. It was perfect. And, Guruji just looked at me and said, oh, you write very well. And he winked at me, knowing full well that while he was sitting on the stage, he was writing this perfect press statement. And it was unfathomable that something like that could be written in that space of time. I was certainly incapable of it, but when Gurudev works through you, anything can happen. And I remember at the end of that visit, somebody had given Gurudev a private plane, because it was quite a few hops that he had to take. And he had got on the plane, and the next thing, there were about 30 teachers standing around. The plane stopped the engines, and Gurudev stood on the platform, and he started saying, I just want to tell you people about him. And I was a new teacher, so I'm thinking, who's Guruji speaking about? So Guruji is pointing at me and said, just want to say, he's so brilliant, he's so efficient, he's so he produces so quickly. I'm thinking, okay, Guruji speaking to the person behind me, So I'm looking behind and I see, you know, there's nobody behind me. Guruji's looking at me. And he's saying, he works so fast, he's so efficient. And I remember looking at Guruji thinking, Gurudev, I really thought you know everything, you know me, but this point of me you don't know, because I'm like the biggest procrastinator in the world. I'll think about things and immediately after that happened, I became so efficient, so dynamic, and all these courses started happening, and that procrastination completely fell away. Just by Gurudev saying, "This is what you are," it had changed this lazy, procrastinating pattern that I had had throughout my school, my university. It was such a point that even luckily I had a good memory. I would even study from other people's notes before the time. First watch a movie, then study. And luckily I had this good memory, but my procrastination was to that point. And with that, it had simply disappeared. So those were the experiences of, of traveling with Gurudev over those that time in a nutshell.
I think he also recently visited Cape Town, no, in some 2012, 13 also.
Yes, his next visit is overdue. So he was last year in 2012, and that was quite an interesting experience. I had got to spend quite a bit of time again with Gurudev and driven him quite a few times and been okay. And at this point, we had bought this property. Gurudev had done Rudram. He had come with somebody else, and all of a sudden he said, "Okay, he's going to leave, and I've got to drive him." And my car was turned the wrong way. I quickly turned the car around, and Gurudev had got in the car. Gurudev got in, Banuma was at the back, and two other teachers. And as we got to the entrance of that property, we should have turned right. And I looked down the road, and something said, "No, turn left." So I turned left, and the roads were supposed to meet like that. And Gurudev looks at me with a completely naughty smile on his face and said, "Oh, you're taking the long way." And I had driven that road many times, and I said, "No, Guruji, it's just a little minute or two, but you know." So there we go. And as we start driving, I feel really confident. I know this road, not a problem. I'm driving. Guruji said, "Oh, you have taken the long way." So I said, "No, Guruji." Now this doubt has existed in my mind. Guruji has this naughty look on his face. And, we're driving, and I thought, now I have this doubt. So I take my phone out and I'm trying to check Google Maps, and there's no signal. So Guruji smiles. He says, I look at him, we smile at each other. I'm like, okay, you know, now I'm thinking, I don't know where I am. And I keep driving. So I'm driving, and you think, I don't want to waste Gurudev's time. So I turn to him and I said, Guruji, and he said, here, you put these chips in your mouth. You put these chips, put in my mouth. So now I know that I'm lost and I don't know where I'm going. So every time I turn to Guruji like this, Guruji turns his head that way. So I turn once more to him. Guruji puts his glasses on and he folds his arms. So I thought, now what do you do? You lost, you're driving, you don't know where you're going. I say, Guruji, he doesn't answer. So now I'm thinking, you are really lost. I'm driving. I'm waiting for this board to say Cape Town that way. And, eventually, every time I look at him, he's just not looking at me. And I don't know what to do. I'm sitting in the front driving. I'm thinking he's meditating. Also, don't disturb him. What do I do? What do I do? And eventually I see Table Mountain, which is quite a landmark. And I said, okay, no, you just keep driving straight. Okay, that way, definitely the right way. And Guruji looks at, as I say this in my mind, Guruji looks at me and says, no, take the next left. And, he just burst out laughing. I started laughing. And he started directing me how to get home completely in my own city. And, it was quite a prank that Gurudev had pulled on me. It was really funny. And even later that night, we had arranged a press conference and we were speaking about it. I was doing the media again, and I was sitting alone with Guruji and telling him how it would happen. And then Guruji looked at me and, he just said, they will ask this, and that question. And I looked at him. He gave 6 questions in a row that they would ask. And as they started asking the questions, different people started asking exactly that question. And it was this, it was this unfathomable notion that Gurudev knows everything in the future. He knows everyone around him, and sometimes you wonder why he keeps playing this game as if he's just as if he doesn't know what's going to happen next. And it's really interesting observing a being that knows everything and is so totally in this moment. So we had very beautiful experiences with Gurudev in Cape Town, and yes, I became one of those people where Guruji had to direct me in my own city. So, so one of the Ayurvedic doctors told me, you're putting a little stress on your system because you work in the day, you go straight from there, you teach at night, and so you'll get diabetes if you carry on. So, and I was doing very little at that time. I was basically doing the media, teaching just these youth courses and happiness programs, and going to work. And I thought, I'm going to tell Guruji. So she said, no, you should cut back on your activity. So it was at Navratri time, can't remember which year. So I thought, okay, I'm going to tell Guruji, what can I cut back? So normally I would ask to see him, then off you'd go. And so we waited under the tree at the chain. We waited. I tell you, we waited the whole day. And Jana would keep messaging to say, Gurudev said, wait. Now I'm waiting at the tree and I see people go in, people come out, people go in, people come out. I'm like, okay. And then people go in, people come out. I waited the whole day until the evening. I had a headache at the end of the day. The next day, Jana said, no, Guruji said you must come in the morning. And this was happening. And eventually I had this frustration and I said, okay, I'm going now. And I walked from the gate right to Setu Bridge. And as I reached Setu Bridge, Jana called and said, Guruji said, you can come now. And as I walked to his kutira, I said, Guruji, he said, look, I am very busy, right? I said, yes. He said, you too keep busy. He said, eat this banana, you'll be fine. And you can't believe what started happening then. Because at that point, your mind is so small. And you think this is my capacity. And we have no idea of the capacity that we have. And the more you want to do, more power and more, will be given so that you can fulfill that divine wish.
Like he was like, "Don't run behind me. Do your work."
Yeah, yeah. And all I want to do is run behind him. If I
Yeah.
think of that conversation that I had, with Guruji, saying, Guruji, what, he asked me, tell me what you want. He said, I hold the blueprint. Like so serious, it's like whatever you want will happen. And if I think if I could ever edit that again, I'd never say, Gurudev, I just want to be your work. I'd say, Gurudev, can I carry your black bag or can I, But it's like the story of Krishna, it's like, tell me what you want, but you'll do what I want in any case.